The elevator opened to the 32nd floor, and I stepped into our penthouse with a bottle of champagne tucked under my arm and a grin I couldn't contain. The promotion had come through that morning. Senior Creative Director at Whitfield & Kane, the youngest in the agency's history. I'd spent 3 years clawing my way up, pitching campaigns at midnight, flying to Los Angeles and back in a single day, surviving on cold coffee and ambition. My husband didn't know yet. I wanted to see his face when I told him. The apartment was dark except for the warm glow leaking from under our bedroom door. Music played softly, something jazzy, intimate. I set the champagne on the kitchen island and slipped off my heels, padding across the cool hardwood in bare feet. The penthouse smelled wrong. Not the usual sandalwood candle and the faint trace of his cologne. Something floral and heavy, sweet. A perfume I recognized instantly because I'd helped pick it out at a department store counter 3 Christmases ago. My best friend's perfume. I stopped walking. My hand hovered over the bedroom door handle. The music masked most of it, but not the laughter. Low and breathless. His voice, thick with a tenderness I hadn't heard directed at me in months. Then hers, unmistakable. That throaty laugh she saved for flirtation, the one she used on bartenders and clients, and apparently on my husband while I was winning the biggest account of my career. My body went cold from the scalp down, like someone had poured ice water through me. I pressed my palm flat against the door and listened. "You're the only real thing in my life," he said. "She's all surface. Everything with her is a performance. And she has no idea," my best friend whispered. "She's so busy chasing the next promotion, she can't even see what's right in front of her." A sound came from my throat. Not a scream, not a sob. Something small and strangled that I swallowed before it escaped. I took 3 steps backward, then 3 more. I picked up the champagne bottle from the counter. I wanted to hurl it through the door. I wanted to walk in and watch their faces melt from pleasure into horror. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. We'd installed cameras in the main rooms after a break-in scare last year. The bedroom had one angled from the corner near the ceiling. My husband had forgotten about it. He forgot about a lot of things that didn't directly serve him. I hit record on the cloud backup. Then I stood in my own kitchen, barefoot on cold marble, and watched my marriage die on a 4-inch screen. I left the apartment without making a sound. In the parking garage, I sat behind the wheel of my car and stared at the concrete wall until my vision blurred. Then I drove to a hotel downtown, checked in under my maiden name, and sat on the edge of an unfamiliar bed in an unfamiliar room and let the shaking take me. At 2 a.m, I stopped shaking. At 3, I stopped crying. At 4, something shifted behind my ribs. The grief compressed into something denser, something with edges. I opened my laptop and downloaded every clip from the security camera. I saved copies to 3 separate locations. Then I created a new email address and sent everything to it. Then I shut the laptop and slept for 2 hours, the deepest and most dreamless sleep I'd had in months. I went home the next evening as if nothing had happened. My husband was making pasta, his specialty, the one he trotted out whenever he wanted to seem thoughtful without actually being thoughtful. He kissed my cheek at the door. "Where were you last night?" I texted. "You didn't come home." "Work emergency," I said. The Hamilton campaign blew up. I slept at the office. I said it without hesitation, without the tremor I expected. The lie was easy because it no longer mattered. He nodded, already turning back to the stove. "You work too hard. That agency is going to burn you out." "Maybe," I said. "Something smells amazing." I sat at our dining table and ate his pasta and drank his wine and watched him perform the role of devoted husband with the same polished ease he brought to everything. He was handsome. He had always been handsome in that way that opens doors and closes conversations. Dark eyes, easy smile, the kind of jaw that belonged on a billboard. I used to think I was lucky. Now I understood that his beauty was camouflage. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in self-control. I smiled when he touched me. I laughed at his jokes. I asked about his day at the investment firm where he managed other people's money, with the same casual entitlement he managed mine. And every night, after he fell asleep, I went through his phone. The texts were careful. He wasn't stupid. But the deleted photos in his recently deleted folder told the whole story. Restaurants I'd never been to. Hotels I'd never stayed in. Selfies with my best friend, her head on his shoulder, her lips against his neck. The timestamps went back 14 months. 14 months, nearly half our marriage. But it was the financial discovery that turned my grief into something colder. While reviewing our joint accounts for a separate reason, I noticed transfers, small at first, $2,000 here, $3,000 there, then larger, $10,000 to an LLC I'd never heard of, $20,000 to a business account registered under his name and hers together. They were starting a business, a luxury event planning company, funded entirely with money from our joint savings. My money, the bonus from the Henderson campaign, the inheritance from my grandmother. Every dollar I'd poured into our shared future was being siphoned into theirs. I didn't confront him. Confrontation was what the old version of me would have done. The new version opened a spreadsheet and started tracking every transaction. The turning point came from a direction I never could have predicted. I was at a medical conference reception that my firm was branding, just there to supervise the signage installation. I was standing near the bar, nursing a club soda, when a woman approached me. She was tall, elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair and the kind of composed presence that made you stand up straighter. "You're his wife," she said. Not a question. A statement delivered with the precision of a diagnosis. "I'm sorry?" She extended her hand. "I'm Dr. Nora Ashford, your husband's older sister." I stared at her. My husband had a sister. I knew this. He'd mentioned her exactly 3 times in our entire relationship. "She's difficult," he'd said once. "Judgmental. We don't really speak." She disapproved of our marriage and didn't come to the wedding. I'd accepted this the way I accepted all of his narratives, without questioning the author. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Can we talk somewhere quieter?" We sat in a corner of the hotel lobby. 2 women connected by a man who had lied to both of us. She studied me with clinical attention, the way a doctor examines a patient who doesn't yet know what's wrong. "He told me you were cold," I said. "Distant, that you refused to come to the wedding because you didn't approve of me." She let out a short, humorless breath. "I wasn't invited to the wedding. I found out about it 3 weeks after it happened, from a cousin's social media post. When I called to congratulate him, he told me it was a small ceremony, and that you preferred to keep things intimate, that you were uncomfortable around his family." Every sentence was a small demolition. Another wall of his carefully constructed reality crumbling. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Why now?" "Because I've been watching him from a distance for years, and the pattern is accelerating." She set her hands flat on the table. "I'm a psychiatrist. I don't diagnose family members. It would be unethical. But I can tell you that the behavior you're experiencing, the charm, the isolation, the financial manipulation, it's not new. It's a system. And it always escalates." "You know about the money," I said. "I know about the woman. She met my eyes, your friend. I saw them together at a restaurant in the meatpacking district 2 months ago. I debated whether to contact you. I wasn't sure you'd believe a sister he'd painted as the family villain." "I believe you," I said. The words came out steady and sure. Then I told her everything, the videos, the financial transfers, the LLC, the 14 months of lies. I watched her face change as I spoke, from careful neutrality to something fierce and focused. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that rearranged every assumption I'd held about my situation. "This isn't his first time. Before you, there was a woman named Diane. They were together for 3 years. He did the same thing. Charm, isolation, financial entanglement. When she tried to leave, he convinced their mutual friends that she was unstable. He had her locked out of her own apartment. She lost her job because of the stories he spread. By the time she extracted herself, she had nothing. No savings, no reputation, no support Sun. I tried to help her, but I found out too late. He was very good at keeping us apart. The parallel was horrifying. I wasn't special. I wasn't even unique in my suffering. I was a pattern. A template he'd perfected and repeated. What happened to Diane? She rebuilt. Slowly. Painfully. She's in Portland now. She runs a small nonprofit. But it took her 5 years to recover financially and longer emotionally. The silence between us was dense with understanding. Two women looking at the same monster from different angles, finally seeing the complete shape. I'm not going to be another Diane, I said. No, she agreed. You're not. Because you have something she didn't. What? Me. And you have evidence. And you have time, if you're willing to use it. The plan took shape over the following 6 weeks. I met with Nora in secret, at her Upper West Side office after hours. At diners in neighborhoods neither of us frequented. She introduced me to a divorce attorney named Judith Crane, a compact woman with steel-gray eyes who spoke in short declarative sentences and charged by the hour in amounts that made my eyes water. The prenuptial agreement has a fidelity clause, Judith said, turning pages with a red lacquered fingernail. Standard language, but enforceable. Proven infidelity triggers a significantly more favorable division. The video evidence is strong, but we want more. Texts, financial records, witness testimony. We want to build a case so airtight, his lawyers advise him to surrender before the first hearing. Judith also brought in a forensic accountant, a quiet woman named May, who wore reading glasses on a chain and could trace money through shell companies the way a bloodhound follows a scent. Within a week, May had mapped the entire scheme. The LLC my husband and my best friend had created was called Luminaire Events. It had a website, business cards, and a shared bank account containing $140,000. All of it sourced from our joint savings through a series of small transfers designed to stay below my radar. But that wasn't the worst part. The LLC had taken on debt. A line of credit secured against our apartment. My apartment. The one I'd made the down payment on with my grandmother's money. He had forged my signature on the guarantee. That's criminal, Judith said with the satisfied tone of someone who just found the winning card. Fraud and forgery. This changes everything. Meanwhile, I played my role. The busy, distracted wife. I let him comfort me about work stress. I went to dinner with my best friend and listened to her talk about her new business venture, some vague consulting thing she was launching. She was so animated, so excited, describing plans that were funded with my stolen money and built on the foundation of my stolen marriage. I smiled and nodded and ordered another glass of wine I didn't drink. The hardest part was the intimacy, not the physical kind. He'd mostly stopped reaching for me at night, which was its own confirmation. The hardest part was the conversational intimacy, the casual cruelty of being lied to by someone who knew exactly which words would keep you docile. I'm thinking about stepping back from the firm, he said one evening, swirling bourbon in a glass. Maybe starting something of my own, something creative. That sounds exciting, I said, my voice warm with counterfeit support. You've always had such great instincts for business. He smiled at me, and in that smile I saw the mechanism. The way he tested reactions, calibrated responses, adjusted his approach in real time. He was feeling me out, preparing me for the revelation that our money was gone, and that his brilliant new venture needed my support, and eventually my silence. Nora called me the next day with news that cracked the case wide open. I spoke with Diane, she said. She's willing to provide a written statement. But there's more. I found a third woman, before Diane. A woman named Valerie who dated him in his 20s. The same pattern. Charm, control, financial exploitation. She confronted him and he retaliated by sending intimate photos to her employer. She was fired. She never pressed charges because he convinced her no one would believe her. 3 women. 3 iterations of the same predatory cycle. The evidence of a pattern was now undeniable, Not just for divorce court, but potentially for criminal prosecution. We need to move soon, I told Judith. He's getting ready to reveal the LLC. He's going to present it as a surprise, a gift, something he built for us. And when the money is gone, he'll either blame the market or blame me. Judith nodded. We're ready. But I want to talk about venue. Where do you want this to happen? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. His firm was hosting its annual client appreciation gala at the Street Regis in 2 weeks. Every partner, every major client, every person whose opinion he carefully cultivated would be in that room. My best friend would be there too. She always came to these events as my +1, the supportive best friend, hiding in plain sight. The gala, I said. Judith raised an eyebrow. Public. Very. The 2 weeks that followed were the longest of my life. I finalized the divorce papers. I coordinated with Judith and May on the financial evidence package. I had quiet conversations with the managing partner at my husband's firm, a woman named Sandra Chen, who listened to my summary of the forged signatures and the misappropriated funds with an expression that went from skepticism to fury in under 90 seconds. And through it all, I smiled. I kissed my husband goodbye each morning. I texted my best friend heart emojis and restaurant recommendations. I was the perfect unsuspecting wife, and the effort of it nearly broke me every single day. Nora kept me steady. She called every evening at 9 after her last patient, and we talked. Not always about the plan. Sometimes about her work, her garden, the 3 cats she'd adopted in a moment of what she called aggressive optimism. She told me about growing up with my husband, how his charm had developed early and been rewarded constantly by parents who mistook manipulation for intelligence, how she'd tried to warn them and been dismissed as jealous, how she'd eventually stopped trying and built her life at a careful distance from the blast radius of his personality. He told me once, when we were teenagers, she said, that people are just puzzles. You figure out what piece they're missing, and you become that piece. Then they can never let you go. That's terrifying, I said. It's also his weakness, she replied. He's so focused on being what other people need that he never developed anything real inside himself. When the mask comes off, there's nothing underneath. And nothing is very easy to defeat. The night of the gala, I wore black. Simple, architectural, expensive. Not a dress meant to seduce or impress. A dress meant to be remembered. My husband adjusted his tie in our bathroom mirror and told me I looked incredible. I thanked him and wondered if he'd remember this moment later, the last time he complimented his wife before everything he'd built collapsed around him. The Street Regis Ballroom was a cathedral of crystal and candlelight. 300 people in formal wear, circulating with champagne flutes and business cards, performing the elaborate ritual of wealth acknowledging itself. My husband worked the room like a conductor, moving from cluster to cluster, handshake to handshake, his smile never faltering. My best friend arrived in a red dress that demanded attention. She kissed my cheek and told me I looked tired. I told her she looked stunning. We stood side by side, the betrayer and the betrayed, and to everyone watching we were the picture of female friendship. Nora was there, seated at a corner table. We'd agreed she would remain invisible until the moment came. She caught my eye once across the room and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The managing partner, Sandra Chen, took the podium for the annual address. She spoke about growth, about trust, about the sacred responsibility of managing other people's futures. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Then Sandra paused. Before we continue, she said, her voice carefully neutral, I'd like to invite one of our own to share a few words. She's been an extraordinary supporter of this firm and a tireless advocate for the values we hold dear. Please welcome Samantha. My husband's head snapped toward the podium, confusion clouding his features. This wasn't on the program. I hadn't told him I was speaking. I walked to the microphone. The click of my heels was the only sound in the room. I looked out at 300 faces. Then I looked at him. I want to talk about trust, I said. My voice carried clear and calm through the ballroom's sound system. Trust is the foundation of everything we do, in business, in friendship, in marriage. We give people our confidence, our money, our hearts, and we believe they'll honor that gift. I paused. On the screens flanking the stage, the firm's logo disappeared. In its place, a document appeared. The LLC registration for Luminaire Events. 2 names listed as partners, my husband's and my best friend's. A murmur rippled through the crowd. 14 months ago, I continued, my husband and my best friend began an affair. I know this because I have video evidence from our home security system. I won't show that here. Some things should remain private, even when the people involved don't deserve that courtesy. The murmur became a roar. My husband stood frozen, his champagne glass suspended halfway to his mouth. My best friend's face went white. What I will show you, I said, is this. The screen changed to a financial summary prepared by May. Clean, professional, devastating. Transfer records from our joint accounts to the LLC. The forged signature on the line of credit. The apartment guarantee I never signed. $140,000, I said. Taken from our joint savings without my knowledge or consent. A line of credit secured against our home with a forged signature. Not just betrayal, fraud. The room had gone absolutely silent. I could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass at the back of the room. As of this afternoon, I have filed for divorce. My attorney, Judith Crane, has also filed a criminal complaint for fraud and forgery. And I have submitted a full report to this firm's ethics committee documenting the misappropriation of marital assets by one of your managing directors. I looked at Sandra Chen, who gave a single firm nod. She'd already reviewed everything. The board had been briefed that afternoon. My husband's career at the firm was already over. He just didn't know it yet. Then Nora stood up. She walked to the podium with the measured grace of a woman who had waited decades for this moment. The crowd shifted, confused. Few people knew who she was. My name is Dr. Nora Ashford, she said. I am his sister. The shock that went through the room was physical. I felt it like a change in air pressure. For 20 years, I have watched my brother manipulate and exploit the people closest to him. I have watched him destroy a woman named Diane and a woman named Valerie, using the same methods he used on his wife: charm, isolation, financial control. I was silenced by family loyalty and my own cowardice. I will not be silent anymore. The evidence you've seen tonight is real. The pattern is documented. And the man standing in front of you is not who he has presented himself to be. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The calm, clinical delivery was more devastating than any scream. My husband finally moved. He took a step forward, his face contorted, the handsome mask cracking to reveal something ugly and panicked underneath. This is insane, he said, his voice cracking. She's unstable. She's been jealous of me her whole life. And my wife, she's having a breakdown. The stress of her job, she's not thinking clearly. I can explain everything. The room watched him with the collective gaze of people witnessing a car crash. No one moved to help him. I stepped back to the microphone one last time. I'm thinking very clearly, I said, for the first time in 3 years. I turned and walked off the stage. Nora fell into step beside me. Behind us, the ballroom erupted. Security moved toward my husband. Sandra Chen was already on the phone. My best friend, abandoned in her red dress, stood alone in the center of the room, as every social connection she'd cultivated through me evaporated in real time. We didn't look back. In the lobby, the noise of the ballroom faded to a distant hum. The marble floors gleamed under soft light. I stopped walking and realized my hands were trembling. Nora put her arm around my shoulders. The gesture was awkward and unpracticed. The touch of a woman who spent most of her life keeping people at professional distance. It was the kindest thing anyone had done for me in months. How do you feel? She asked. Like I just performed surgery on myself, without anesthesia. That's about right, she said. It'll hurt more tomorrow. But the thing that was killing you is out. We walked into the cold night air. The city sparkled around us, indifferent and beautiful. Somewhere behind us, a man I'd loved was watching his carefully constructed life disintegrate. Somewhere, a woman I'd trusted was discovering the price of betrayal. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a vast, clean, exhausting emptiness, like a room that had been stripped bare and was waiting to be refurnished. The months that followed were exactly as brutal and exactly as necessary as Nora had predicted. The divorce was finalized in 11 weeks. Judith Crane was worth every cent of her terrifying hourly rate. The fidelity clause in the prenuptial agreement was triggered by the video evidence, and the fraud charges eliminated any leverage my husband's attorneys might have had. I kept the apartment. I recovered every dollar that had been funneled into the LLC. The forged signature on the line of credit resulted in criminal charges that his family's lawyers eventually plea-bargained down to probation and full restitution, but the conviction followed him like a shadow. His firm terminated him the morning after the gala. Sandra Chen called me personally to confirm it. She also apologized, which surprised me. "I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner," she said. "The charm is very effective camouflage." My best friend disappeared into the wreckage of her own choices. The LLC was dissolved. Her reputation in the city's social and professional circles, which had been built almost entirely on her proximity to me and to my husband's connections, collapsed overnight. I heard she moved to Miami. I didn't look her up. I didn't need to. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle or the financial reconstruction. The hardest part was the quiet. Coming home to an apartment that no longer contained the constant low hum of deception. Sitting at a table set, for one. Learning to trust my own perceptions again after years of having them subtly, systematically undermined. Nora helped. She came for dinner every Thursday, bringing takeout containers and her particular brand of dry, precise comfort. She never told me it would be okay. She told me it would be real, and that real was better than okay, even when it hurt more. One Thursday, over Thai food and cheap wine, she told me about a patient she couldn't discuss in detail. A woman in a situation I recognized. The same patterns, the same isolation, the same financial strangulation disguised as partnership. "She has no one," Nora said. "Her family is across the country. Her friends are all his friends. She doesn't even have a separate bank account. She came to me because she Googled the symptoms of what she was feeling and ended up on a psychology website instead of a medical one. She doesn't know what's happening to her. She just knows something is wrong." I set down my fork. How many women like her do you see? More than you'd think. More than anyone talks about. It's not always dramatic. It's not always violence. Sometimes it's just someone slowly, methodically erasing another person's ability to trust themselves. By the time they realize what's happened, they have no resources and no one to call. The idea didn't come to me fully formed. It grew, the way the best ideas do, from a small seed of recognition into something with roots and structure and purpose. We started with a phone line. A single dedicated number staffed by volunteers, women who had been through it and come out the other side. Then a fund, modest at first, seeded with a portion of my settlement and a surprisingly generous donation from Sandra Chen, who turned out to have her own quiet history with a charming man who wasn't what he seemed. Within 6 months, we had a name, a board, and a waiting list. The Ashford Initiative, named not for my married name or my maiden name, but for the woman who had crossed a hotel lobby to tell me the truth when silence would have been easier. I was in the new office, a bright converted loft on the Lower East Side, reviewing grant applications, when my phone buzzed. A text from Nora, Diane called. "She wants to volunteer. She's flying in next month." I stared at the message. Diane. The woman before me. The first one he'd broken. She'd rebuilt herself, as Nora had told me, slowly and painfully and alone. Now she wanted to make sure no one else had to do it that way. I typed back a single word. Good. Then I turned to the window and looked out at the city. Not the penthouse view I'd once had, framed by expensive curtains, in an apartment full of lies. A street-level view, cluttered and noisy and entirely mine. A delivery truck honked. A woman pushed a stroller past a coffee cart. The ordinary, imperfect, unglamorous machinery of a life being lived, honestly. The story I thought I was living, the one about the successful wife and the handsome husband and the loyal best friend, that story was fiction. A narrative written by someone who needed me to believe it so he could keep taking what he wanted. This story, the real one, the one about the woman who stopped believing the fiction and started writing her own, was just getting started.